Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call-in talk show all about the Wheel of Time. I used to say weekly, but we're actually having 4 shows over the next, 7 days. But we're excited tonight. You're here to talk all about the metaphysics of the Wheel of Time. But before we jump into that, remember on Friday, Sarah Nakamura is going to be with us here live. She's a super fan, super Watt geek, and happens to be the Wheel of Time consultant on the Amazon TV series. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to her. Make sure you're here at 8 p.m. that night. And then don't forget on Sunday, we're going to have Rebecca from Reading the Pattern. She's going to be with us here talking all about the episodes from Season 1 from the Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. And thanks to Rafe, who did a Q&A on Instagram the other day, thanks to all the answers he gave us, I kind of wonder if Rebecca and I will be able to break down just what we'll cover in each of those episodes. Do you think we can do it? We'd love to have you with us on Sunday afternoon. I think that one's going to be at 3:30 Eastern. And then next Wednesday, Brandon Sanderson will be our guest on April 1st. And that's not a joke. He just tweeted and Instagrammed and Facebooked all about it. So hopefully you believe us and you'll show up while we talk all about the Wheel of Time, even a deleted scene we're going to cover. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you never know what's going to happen live. So make sure you be there. So, okay, without further ado, thanks for bearing with that. For those of you that are new, please give us a subscribe, like this video so all your fellow fans, will see this and can join us tonight. But tonight we have with us, and let me welcome our guest, Lauren Roundy from Unraveling the Pattern, down there on the left, and Christopher Cottingham up in the right, top right there. Chris and Lauren, good to see you both. Welcome to have you here tonight, man.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, so if those of you that don't know Lauren, he actually created a YouTube page. When was it? Was it back before the end of the year, or was it right in January? I can't remember when you started.
It's only been maybe 2 months, yeah.
Yeah, he hit this with a splash because he does these 3D animations, talks about the kind of the details of the Wheel of Time, and recently covered kind of the metaphysics. And I had the joy of taking part in kind of breaking down some of the canon. It happens to be something I love to do, and in something that Chris loves to do also. And after that, Lauren said, hey, it'd be fun to do a show all about this. And I absolutely agreed, invited him in. I actually told you he was going to be here live. He was going to be our first live guest. If you were here recently, we did a test. He, unfortunately, is not our first live guest. Virus, if you know what I mean. But he's alive, and that's important. So, Lauren, it's awesome to have you here. And but before we begin, before we jump into our first topic, Lauren did send along something he wanted to bring with him, but he was kind enough to send along, a gift. So, and you assured me, Lauren, it's not the virus. So I appreciate that. Right. So he asked, I think I'll open this live. He asked me to do that, and I think it's totally cool. I would love to. So I'm going to open the card here first. Oh, nice. What is it? I need to dig it? He said
you don't need to open that yet.
Don't need to open this one? Okay. Yeah, no. So he said a proper in needs a proper sign. Thank you very much, Lauren. Let me see what a sign, huh?
Yeah, you like the Christmas wrapping there?
Yeah, the Christmas wrapping. Nice job. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Holy crap. That's amazing.
Isn't that awesome?
And you can see that, yeah. For everyone looking at that, that is so freaking cool. we're gonna have to put this like right here, Yeah. Like, how do I do that? Right there, right?
Perfect. Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you so much, man. That's awesome. I can't wait to hang that sucker. That is phenomenal. That's so
glad
cool.
You like it. Shout out to Larry and Lucretia at Geekology Lab. They're the ones who created it. So.
Wow, that is so. Oh man, now I can't wait to. We're just going to pause the show. We're going to hang the sign. No, hang that. That is so cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That wasn't why I helped, but I'm so glad that you're here tonight, and we're going to be talking all about the Wheel of Time. That's anyways, I think I'm going to be geeking out about the sign for the rest of the week.
Awesome. I'm glad you like it.
Oh, yeah. Now I just want to stare at it. So anyways, thank you very much, Lauren. Let's jump into this. For those of you in chat, we're going to talk all about the Wheel of Time's metaphysics. We're going to hit the creator, Dark One, souls, threads, wheel, pattern, answer some of the questions you have in chat. We're going to open up the phone lines a little bit early today, and we're going to ask you to call in if you have a question about that particular topic. So without further ado, let's get started with our first topic. This is the creator and the Dark One. Now, here's some base foundational quotes we should kind of bring up about the creator and Dark One. Let's go through those. Robert Jordan said in 1996, "I envision the Dark One as being the dark counterpart, the dark balance, if you will, to the creator, carrying on the theme, the yin-yang, light-dark, necessity of balance theme that has run through the books. It's somewhat..." Chris, what's the Manichaean, or I'm terrible at pronouncing that word. I know, but I think it works. And then the second quote here is, his thesis was this, and this is a paraphrase, "A perfect creator should create a perfect creation. To act, miraculously or no, on this world would be tantamount to acknowledging imperfection in himself. So when humanity screwed things up, they've been left on their own to patch things up." Now, to both of you, that second one is a paraphrase. We weren't there for the exact quote, but the concept of a creator, I think Rand covers this a little bit. The concept of a gardener, leaves his creation and just moves on. When it comes to the creator and the Dark One and being balanced, Lauren, maybe right off the bat here, do you believe that that's true? I mean, Robert Jordan said that he was the dark balance. What do you think he meant by that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that, one of the questions that people brought up after my recent video is was the Dark One created at the moment of creation? I think some people assume that was true, and that's based on all the evidence that I've seen and all the things that I've read. That's not true, right? The Dark One exists outside of the pattern, outside of the wheel, possibly. And the creator and Dark One seem to be these coexisting counterparts that maybe have always existed. It's kind of unclear. But I definitely think that they are equal but opposite forces. That's what I think.
When you say equal, I think this is an important question. And for everyone out there that's watching, we're going to try to insert some polls into chat. But I think this question is an important one. Do you think that the creator is equal to the Dark One? Thumbs up if yes, you agree, and thumbs down if you don't. I'm kind of curious. To that question, and for you, Chris, equal, do you agree with that idea that they're equal?
I still don't know, and that's after reading the series for the last 20 years or so. I don't know. I think there is conflicting evidence. We definitely are told at different points that the Dark One is eternal, outside the pattern, exists before the moment of creation. We're also told that, Varen says at one point that there are three constants: the Dark One, the creator, and tel'aran'rhiod, the world of dreams. And I personally don't know how the world of dreams could exist before creation existed for the world of dreams to mirror. So that implies to me that those three things are not necessarily all equally eternal and equally constant.
So that's an interesting point there, which is equally eternal. So I think equal. The question of it. And by the way, I'm watching chat. It looks like, I don't know, I want to say it's 60% doesn't agree it's equal and 40% does. And Dana pointed out this balance but not equal. Lauren, to that point, when you say equal, how do you think about equal and balanced?
Yeah, I think I do really mean balanced. I guess the pattern and the way that the world of the Wheel of Time seems to be built, it seems like the creator kind of has a one-up on the Dark One, right? Like the Dark One's imprisoned somehow, right? He's outside of the pattern. But you could also argue that the creator is outside of the pattern. That's something that could be talked about. But, when Rand brings, so spoilers, by the way, for the very end.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I always forget this. So Taylor's going to kill me. There are spoilers for the others that are watching. We're going to spoil some events. It just so happens that a lot of these questions, some answers do come from A Memory of Light, the last book in the series, in interactions there. So those of you that are watching, I apologize, but it's really hard to talk metaphysics and the theories behind the metaphysics in our spoiler edition without spoiling some things. So if you happen to be watching, you're going to have some things spoiled. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, so a couple things. At the end of A Memory of Light, when Rand is literally dueling with the Dark One, it starts out with him fighting Moradin, but then he touches the darkness and he has this, his body essentially freezes, and then he has this sort of existential battle with the Dark One, right? And during that time, Rand observes a lot of things about the Dark One, some really interesting things that we can kind of pick up on about the essence of the Dark One. Some of the descriptions he uses is cold expanse that's somehow both infinite and empty. And then later, when Rand finally sort of tricks Moradin into grabbing Kalendor, and then Moraine and Nynaeve use the flaw in Kalendor to control Moradin, and then they pass the ability or the circle control to Rand. Rand now has access to Saidar, Saidin, and the True Power, and he weaves the three of them together so that he can reach in and like literally grab the essence of the Dark One by the neck. Not that he has a neck, right? And then he pulls the Dark One in, and in the moment that he pulls him into the pattern, it says, now that the Dark One is affected by time, where he wasn't before. It also says that Rand sees everything, the Dark One's secrets completely. And I'm quoting here, Rand says in all caps, "You would never have given me rest as you promised, Father of Lies. You would have enslaved me as you would have enslaved the others. You cannot give oblivion. Rest is not yours, only torment." I think maybe Rand is sort of showing the limitations of the Dark One. The Dark One can't actually give Moradin what he wanted, which was to cease to exist, complete oblivion. So possibly maybe the Dark One doesn't have the ability to completely destroy.
That's an interesting question. And by the way, for those of you that are watching, yes, the books have just been spoiled for you. Wow. Hopefully you left. Hopefully you took me seriously when you were here and you did not stick around. Emmy, if you're watching, I'm very upset. Emmy is a new reader and she's not there yet. Please, hopefully you heeded that warning.
Yes,
but there's some points here people are making in chat, which I think are good. Omar put out they're only equal in power because the creator has constraints according to certain rules. Such do not apply to the Dark One, or the Dark One does not follow, giving him an advantage to rise up to the level. And that's an interesting point, right? The creator did imprison the Dark One. Now, I guess even equal things, you can consider them, they're off balance at times. Maybe the creator was just more powerful in the moment that he imprisoned him. He took advantage of that moment. Or maybe he's always more powerful. And it's not in the sense of balance for the sake of equality of power, but it is balance in the sake of existence of good and evil, if that makes sense. It's the balance that these things exist, not that they're as equally powerful. And I think that comes out, I like Omar's point there, which is, and maybe there are some constraints here, right? Which is the creator obviously is not willing to destroy the Dark One. Well, at least doesn't believe that you should destroy the Dark One. He imprisons him in this point. And to me, that says something about the creator himself, whatever that is. And maybe good, is that saying that good can't destroy then? I mean, in the end, is that the whole point, that the creator just can't or just won't, Chris?
Well, that feels like a good spot for the quote that I mentioned to you, except that I don't have it handy. There's a quote that comes from Robert Jordan's notes, where he was writing, early on before the series was finished, where he still thought he would finish the series in 6 books, but he's writing a synopsis of how it will end. And one of the things he says is that Rand realizes that the reason he has failed in opposing the Dark One is because he was trying to force everyone in line and force everyone to battle the Dark One with him. And that in doing that, he was taking away their free will, and that free will is key to opposing the Dark One, that people have to choose freely to oppose evil. They can't be compelled to oppose evil. And I think that dovetails really well with Lauren's point about the possibility that maybe the Dark One couldn't have destroyed creation. I think part of what we're talking about here is the Dark One outside of the creator's design, or is the Dark One intrinsic to the nature of the pattern and the nature of what the creator wanted to make? What we are told in A Memory of Light is that the Dark One is necessary. The Dark One's existence is necessary for there to be free will.
But that's a good question, because if you remember, the Creator creates or imprisons the Dark One at the moment of creation, right? So what's interesting is the imprisonment of the Dark One doesn't happen until the necessity of free will exists with the wheel. We're told that those things are paired, not that the Dark One's been imprisoned for a while and then the Creator decided to create the wheel. And so I think the pairing of those two events is an important recognition in the Creator's, at least, I don't know if you call them morals or ethics or need or whatever, when it comes to creating the wheel. Imprisoning the Dark One was a part of that, in the sense of from what you're saying, right? The necessity of free will necessitated the Dark One. And so I wonder, if the Dark One was free, Lauren, do you believe that he could destroy the wheel or just usurp the pattern?
Yeah, this is a very complicated question. I don't know that I have an answer to that. I've been doing a lot of researching, and it seems like people could destroy the pattern using balefire.
Yep.
But again, they're choosing to do it. I'm not sure that, and again, major spoilers. I'm sorry, everybody. Major spoilers for the end of the series. But when Rand and the Dark One are having this sort of back and forth, the Dark One, it shows Rand an example of what a world where only the Dark One was in charge. Basically, no creator exists.
Right.
And even then, people have some choice, which is really fascinating to me. It's like the Dark One, I don't know, maybe there are limitations in this, in the pattern. And what I was going to say, though, is that the Dark One uses the wheel to spin a new pattern, but he's still leveraging the threads or souls of the people that I don't know where those come from. Do they exist outside of the pattern and then are used and spun into the pattern, or outside of the wheel, I should say? That's another question.
But... Yeah, now you're jumping ahead into the wheel, and maybe this is a good point. And Andrew brings up a good point. I did use the quote, as far as the Creator imprisoning the Dark One at the moment of creation. I did use the quote from the books there. And so while we're talking here, I'll try to find a more reliable narrator of that quote, as far as Jordan actually saying or stating the words. And if those of you that have the compendium with you, is it called the compendium, want to look that fact up, I kind of wonder, a lot of those interesting in-world things that Jordan had made a point of saying, well, it's an in-world and unreliable narrator potentially. Right. A lot of those things made it into kind of the factual definitions of these type of things outside of it. So I'll leave that one as a question mark. Andrew, good call out in chat there. But I think this does bring us to the wheel. Sorry, Chris, were you going to say something?
Yeah, before you jump to the wheel.
Yeah. Let's do it.
I was looking at the quote that Lauren mentioned from A Memory of Light, and it's from the last chapter before the epilogue. And this is the point where Rand is holding the Dark One in his grip, and Rand seems to be convinced that he has the ability to kill the Dark One.
Right.
And he says he understood finally that the Dark One was not the enemy. It never had been, which is kind of horrible to think about, because the Dark One seems to delight in evil and rape and torture and all of those things. But I think what it's saying is that the Dark One provides the capacity for free will, and that Rand could destroy it, but that would remove free will from creation. I think that also implies that the Creator could have made creation without the Dark One being bound, but chose to bind the Dark One and connect that with the pattern and with creation, so that his creation would have free will.
But to me, that question of could the Dark One, I mean, we can see what happens when the Dark One gets access to the pattern, and we can see the destruction begin to happen. It's kind of hard for me to believe that, minus the prison, that the Dark One wouldn't have direct access to the wheel and the pattern itself. I mean, when you think about what drives the wheel is the one power. Like in my head, at least, I have this kind of like this geeky idea of, imagine the Dark One driving the wheel with the true power instead of the one power, and what would that wheel look like, and what would that pattern, if he wove a pattern. Now that's creation, and some might say that wouldn't ever happen, and that that's not the Dark One, and the Dark One, some people think that he would just take over the pattern, and others would say no, he would just destroy it. And maybe Rand's experience suggests that is what would happen. It's just destruction. But maybe. Yeah,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So in one of the visions that the Dark One shows Rand, which we find out later is lies, it's not true. The Dark One probably wouldn't have done it that way. But he does see Nynaeve, who at the time is shown as a chosen. She's one of the Forsaken. And she is able to channel the one power. And Rand, in that false reality that the Dark One weaves around him, Rand is actually trying to access the one power, but the taint is much worse than it is in the books. It's so bad that he has to dig very deep to get to the one power. It's there, but it's so difficult to get to. And he gets sick even trying. And then they're about to force turn him, right, to the dark, with the 13 Murdral and the 13 Aes Sedai. And then that's when he manages to escape and weave his own reality. But I find it interesting that the one power still exists in that world where the Dark One says there's no creator or there's no savior.
Yeah, that's interesting. The question is how much, Jordan would kind of famous for this. He'd say, well, you believed the Dark One. You believed the vision.
True.
You believed the vision that he gave Rand. That's what the reality would be in that case. And so that one's hard. I totally agree. That's an interesting point. But the question is that what would really happen?
Right.
And
I don't know.
And I think that's and I don't know if the polls are working there, Taylor, but if you want to throw the one, does he interfere or does he intervene? I'm kind of curious. We'll chuck a poll in here into chat if we can. But I think this is kind of a good place for us to move on to the wheel. Now, this is, and we're actually getting in before a half an hour into the show, which is great. This is a live call-in talk show. So if you actually would like to give us a call and talk to us about the Dark One and the Creator, do so. Give us a call. We'll chat about that. Some of you might have to wait a little bit. We could probably do calls all night talking about just the Creator and Dark One. So we'll try to take a call, maybe two, but we're going to move forward when it talks about the wheel. Now, the wheel is our second topic here, and I think we have some quotes about the wheel. Let's see if we can. Let me see if I can get Taylor to throw some quotes up about the wheel here. One of these quotes is by Robert Jordan, 2005. He said that it's really an effect of the wheel. He's talking about the seeing Rand and Ashamael above Falme. And he said, it's an effect of the wheel, really. It wasn't the creator. The wheel is more than a simple mechanism. We're not talking about something as simple as a spinning wheel at all. We're talking something more along the lines of the most complex computer you could possibly imagine. Now, he also said, like the heroes linked to the wheel, a man or woman becomes ta'veren because the wheel has decided to use them as an influence on the pattern. And no, the wheel isn't sentient. Think more of a fuzzy logic device that uses feedback to correct what it is doing in order to do it in the most efficient way. And yes, just like Andrew pointed out in chat, the Matrix. I don't see how you can avoid the Matrix in this analogy. And in fact, it makes a lot more sense than just the whole structural idea of a wheel that's turning and a loom and it weaves things. I think that's a really basic concept of how this all works, and I think it's very helpful to go, oh, okay, it weaves a pattern and the pattern. But I think Jordan giving some clarity on how better to frame this in our minds is really interesting. A supercomputer, the most advanced AI that you can possibly imagine. Lauren, when you first read that quote, did that change the way you thought about the wheel?
Yeah, it did a lot. It actually helped put things in perspective for me a lot. There's also another quote where he says when, spoilers again, when Moghedien rips Birgitte from the world of dreams into the real world, it says that Moghedien somehow short-circuited the pattern or the wheel. And I find that really fascinating too. It's almost as if people in the Age of Legends were trying to figure out ways to bypass this supercomputer. They were looking outside of the pattern. They were looking at alternate sources of power. They were messing with things like vacuoles and other things. I mean, yeah, it kind of makes it's a little sci-fi, but it works for me. It helps kind of paint the picture.
It adds a little sci-fi element, which I've always loved about the Wheel of Time, right? It's not this straight fantasy there is this deep sci-fi element to this idea, and Jordan definitely amps that up with his concept about a super AI. Now, if you can take that, right, if you start going down this road, it's a lot of fun, right? The concept that this is all programming. When you think about threads and souls that we'll get to eventually, right, you can almost make that work in your head a little bit easier, right? This idea that the soul is inserted into this, into the program, and is now this entity within the program. I don't know. I'm not saying that Jordan said this is the Matrix, but he certainly implied that this thing, whatever it is that controls this pattern, is as close as we can perceive it, a supercomputer. Chris, is that how you perceive the wheel, or do you think it's just another convenient analogy for us mortals to think about the wheel?
I think that quote and being introduced to it through the fandom and through Theoryland, it really did change the way that I read the Wheel of Time, because reading it on my own, my first thought was that this is just a belief that people in the world have. They believe that time is cyclical. I'm not sure that I believe that. They believe that. And Jordan in other quotes tells us that just because a character, whether it be Moiraine or someone else, whether a character says something very authoritatively, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should believe that it's completely true. They might be saying what they think is true. And that's kind of how I thought about the wheel, as just this way of talking about pattern or fate. But that quote talking about the wheel as this almost this entity that is actively intervening when the pattern starts to go awry, that absolutely changes the way I read it.
Yeah, it's by the way, 56% of our audience here believes that the creator does intervene and interfere in the wheel. And so I think we can talk about that here. The thing that you just said, Chris, but Jordan makes a really important point here. At least he thinks it's very important. So I think we should take it seriously. Sentience. Why? I don't know. I'll throw this out to both of you. Feel free to just jump in. Why do you think he made the point twice in these answers? It's not sentient though, because if you look at it, it's the most advanced supercomputer, right? If in our terminology, the most advanced artificial intelligence that could exist, but it's not sentient. Like, why make that distinction, Lauren, do you think?
Well, maybe it comes back to free will. This idea that the only people who can really make choices are the people that are used by the wheel or in the pattern. And if you make the wheel itself sentient, he says that it's a fuzzy logic device that uses feedback to correct what it is doing in order to do it in the most efficient way. So even then, when the wheel introduces tel'aran'rhiod, for example, it's not doing it because it's like, oh, I need to force these people to make these choices. It's doing it because it sees that the pattern is drifting from what has been predetermined. And so it's bringing these devices in, as it's been programmed to do, to set the course back to the way it should be. And there are even some quotes where it talks about the threads being very straight. And when things kind of weave off course, the tel'aran'rhiod kind of pull those threads back to them, right? So I think maybe if the wheel were sentient, then it would be making choices for people, which is against the creator's will.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a lot of, that's really good. A lot of people in chat are throwing this out. Andrew, if the wheel was sentient, then it could act on its own. Bill said if it balances things, sentience unbalances things. That's a good one. I love that quote. Thomas said sentience can surpass its programs. I love Mary. We know Mary, right? Mary said because binary was a major theme in Wheel of Time, Saidin and Saidar, male, female, creator in the Dark One, and then you add a third on an omnipotent being, that would be odd. Right. That doesn't work. So there's that really important kind of piece where he says not sentient. But that leads us to a really important question here, and everyone disagrees about this, and I'm going to disagree with you both about this. And Chris, I'll give you the first go. Predestination or free will?
Yeah, I want to come back to that for a second. Because what Lauren said about free will tying into whether or not the pattern is sentient, I think it's I have never thought about it that way, but it really brings into focus that quote from Moraine where she says that the pattern is neither good nor evil. It simply is. And I think if we were saying that the wheel was sentient, then, if the wheel had free will, then it would be making choices for good or for evil. I mean, that's the whole point of free will and the wheel of time, is it's the capacity to choose between good and evil. And so for the will not to be sentient, if we say that means that the will does not have free will to make choices, it's just following this predetermined pattern, then that makes Moraine correct, that it's not good or evil. It's simply weaving the threads the way it's supposed to. The good or evil of those choices would come from the creator who originally set the pattern, or from the threads themselves who are making choices within the bounds of the pattern, or from the dark one who is influencing things, but not from the wheel. The wheel is just this mechanism.
So this is an interesting question, and I see a lot of people saying, and we threw out the poll question, is there free will in the Wheel of Time? And certainly from what we see happen in book, it seems like it. And what I mean by that is, Rand's discussion in A Memory of Light with that evil entity. Some of the things that Robert Jordan has said, I think, about people being able to choose and having the necessity of the creator and the dark one. However, is it really something we would consider free will if it's already predestined? We know that the pattern is practically the same each time. We know that the wheel is spitting out that over and over again. Is that something that each of you would consider your free will if you were stuck inside of, and when I say stuck, I mean if you were an entity inside of this thing and that it repeatedly brought you back in and forced you down a certain kind of pre-programmed path? Now, you might be able to choose, what cereal you want to eat in the morning and who you want to marry, maybe. But in the end, if you can't actually choose all of those things to get out of that system, is it really something you'd consider free will, or just kind of free within a garden?
You sound like Ishamiel.
I was just going to say that. Are you Moradin in disguise? I mean, that's essentially his view. He's a nihilist, right? Yeah. He's like, this is not worth it. He feels trapped.
Well, certainly they trapped? I mean, can
yes.
you say they're not?
Yes.
This could be a whole nother discussion about whether or not we have free will, right?
Yes, right.
Do
sure.
we have free will? I don't know. But in the world of the Wheel of Time, I do think it is a limited free will, unlike what we may believe in this world that we live in, right? So I do think it's free will, though, and that's a major theme at the end. My feeling is, yes, we have unreliable narrators, and yes, we have certain things, but also Robert Jordan had to use exposition and dialogue to actually build this world he had created. So not everything that every quote-unquote unreliable narrator says is not true. And I also think when it comes to what Rand says at the end, I mean, he's witnessing that for himself. He's seeing all of these things. He's almost becoming omniscient in that moment. And so I feel like he's a reliable narrator at that moment. And for him, it's all about being able to continue to make choices and to choose again. And Moradin doesn't get that.
Okay, but yes, that's true. But for example, you look at Min's talent, right? She's seeing things that are going to happen no matter what. You look at the wheel, it's programmed. It doesn't have sentience, right? The creator didn't give the wheel sentience, right? He created this artificial intelligence, if you will, and then he forces this pattern. Like, if you can't leave the prison, no matter how nice the prison looks and no matter how many things you can do inside a prison, if you can't walk out of it, it's just not something that I would consider free. Now, within it, within the constraints of the actual wheel itself, they are free as long as they don't push past its programming. And if they do, you never know if like a moose will just jump out of the bushes and run you over. You know what I mean? Like in the end, the wheel has that much control. And so if it does have that much control over you, you're only free in so much that you don't go against it in the way that it doesn't want you to. So, but before we kind of follow up on that, we do have our first caller of the night. Andrew's calling in, wants to talk about the nature of the wheel. So let's pull him in. Hey, Andrew, welcome to the Dusty Wheel tonight. How you doing?
Matt.
Hey.
Good. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How you doing?
I can't complain.
So what's
Lauren,
your
Chris, y'all too?
Andrew,
what's your
thanks for calling.
thought about this? You know, these deep philosophical questions about the Wheel of Time. Where are you at?
Yeah. So for me, it's a bit of a given that the wheel itself is this autonomous creation created by the Creator. That, like I said in your chat, that ultimately it's these ones and zeros, and it's just trying to balance the cosmic checkbook. That's its prime directive, right? So, for me, it brought up the question of if all the wheel is trying to do is maintain a balance in the universe and the way that time is moving forward, would there be an ultimate difference in the ending of time? You know, assuming there would be one, which we know there isn't. But would you get the ultimate same result if the Dark One and the Creator had no interaction as you would with their interaction, just possibly less violent without their interaction?
Okay, so when you say the Creator's interaction, you mean prior to this, in other words, his creation, or his interaction within the pattern?
His interaction within the pattern, both of them interacting within the created, the world that we see and we read.
And so that brings up a question. So I would assume that you answered the question of does the Creator interfere? Are you in support of the idea that the Creator does interfere then and intervene in the pattern?
Yes, I do. I just think he does it in a very different way from the way the Dark One does.
Okay, so this is a great. I love coming down this way because we're moving from the wheel to the pattern, and that is I think this question of does the Creator intervene, is not necessarily a settled question, and I think it's a good one. And this becomes. I mean, do you think that there's kind of this ultimate battle that they're just fighting within the wheel that they were fighting outside of the wheel? Is that kind of how you perceive this? Like they're just having that same good versus evil wherever they're at?
To some extent, for me, I see it more like, like two brothers or two siblings that are fighting over whose turn it is to use the TV remote. I want things to go this way. No, I don't want things to go this way. So they're fighting back and forth. You know, the Dark One wants to destroy all of creation because for him, that's going to be associated with the moment that he was in prison and no longer allowed to, go out and play with the rest of the kids in the neighborhood. And of course, the Creator sees his creation as something that he wants to keep around. He's like, I built this, I want it to stay. So for me, their struggle isn't so much, we see it as good and evil, but it's more of you're trying to destroy what I want, and I don't want you to destroy it. And so they're locked in that battle to just keep one side from winning versus the other.
Okay, but let me take you down a little bit further. Okay, so now, is there free will?
I would say there is, yes.
Okay, so you're saying this cosmic battle between these two forces that represent all good and all evil, that are infinite in their light and darkness, are playing out their battle with their play toys within the pattern, and the play toys themselves actually have real free will? I don't know. So that's where it gets me. It's like if the Creator intervenes and he's part of this, and then to me, it almost makes a case for less free will, right? You're just kind of at his whim. And if he's in there and taking part in this cosmic battle, you're really just, because you brought up the two brothers, I am imagining, like some Transformers battle or something, that ages me, I know. But the idea of Transformers fighting each other, and then they throw their toys off to the side because they don't need them anymore until they decide they want to pick their toys up and play again. So that's at least how I see it. I know maybe, Chris, you have a different view of this. Do you see the same thing as a cosmic battle that's playing out within the actual pattern itself?
No, I used to. I might have even, within the last year or two, I might have described it that way. And partly our late night conversations at Jordan Con have been reshaping the way I see this. Originally, I read the series kind of through the lens of my own beliefs about reality. So, as a Christian and as a minister, I sort of assumed that the Creator figure did intervene, and I assumed that. And then the question was, did Jordan conceive of the Creator and the Dark One as equals, or was the Creator more powerful? Was it more a dualistic thing, like in that Manichaean philosophy that Jordan references, or is it more like a more orthodox Christian philosophy where the creator is more powerful? But all of that is reading it through my own lenses and through the lenses of my own beliefs. And Jordan, of course, was playing with all sorts of beliefs and using his own philosophy, but drawing from lots of influences. And if we look at his quotes, I think that what he was doing was saying, number one, that free will is a necessary part of what the creator wanted this creation to look like, and that the dark one is the thing that energizes the capacity for free will. And so without the dark one, the creation that the creator wanted doesn't work the way he intended. And so the dark one is intrinsic to the dark one's presence is intrinsic to the wheel of time. Without that, you do get all predestination and no free will. And it goes back to that theme of balance between light and shadow. It's also a balance between predestination and free will. So my answer to that question, which one, is both. And
You're cheating.
well,
You're saying,
I mean,
but I hear what
Lauren
you're saying.
said.
Yeah.
I mean, Lauren said it's a limited free will, and that's probably how I would have described it, maybe even before this conversation. But I think it's the same thing. It's a limited free will, but it's more this concept of balance, that there is some free will and there is some predestination, and they are meant to balance each other.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this question out to Andrew before we let you go. And it's a question we're coming up to, and those of you that can in the chat can be answering this. We're going to get there. The question I have for you is: our souls that we see in the books, are these souls created by the creator, or were they created by the wheel? Do you have an answer for that one in your mind right now, or do you want to listen to us debate it first?
If I had to give an answer right now, I think that it's going to be a mix of both.
Interesting.
There's an argument to be made, of course, the extension argument, that by proxy of creating the wheel, that the creator has created all the souls. And you can look at it, when you're looking at this unimaginable supercomputer, that all the souls are ancillary programs to be used by the wheel as it needs to ensure that cosmic balance. So if I had to answer it based kind of like from an IT standpoint, like a computer standpoint, the creator put in the source programming for the souls to be created, and the wheel will spin them out as needed. And then whenever there's an egregious imbalance, the creator comes in, opens up a command prompt, and executes respawn dragon, something of that fact. Whenever it's appropriate.
See, I think we've sufficiently converted some people to the matrix of the Wheel of Time. I love it. Yeah, I agree. It's such a great analogy that it's really hard to get away from. I'll be honest, it's kind of a trap. It's a box I put myself in now because it just conveniently works so well to explain everything that we see. Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for being and calling in. Really appreciate you jumping in, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Hey, thanks, man.
Check out Andrew's Black Tower podcast too.
What'd you say? Say it again. You're
Andrew from the Black Tower podcast, right?
Yeah, I've been discovered. I wasn't going to say anything.
Nice reveal. Andrew, we'll be talking soon. Hey, man, we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye. Oh, nice outing there, Lauren.
Got him.
So we're gonna throw that question in using the automated poll. I'm kind of curious if everyone answers that one. Were souls created by the creator? We'll add that. Don't worry about kind of posting. I know I saw some of you do that. But yeah, that's this concept of free will. I know Mary brought this up. She's like, why does their existence of these superpowers and whether or not they are playing out their war here, does that negate free will? And I'm going to say it's not that I believe it negates the way that the wheel is giving people free will, but I still think it's free will with an asterisk, right? It's free will as determined and allowed by the way that the creator programmed the wheel. And so often you see things happen that are clearly unintentional and only affected by the Ta'veren effect, right? Like the wheel put them, someone's Ta'veren, and all of a sudden things did not happen simply because it was that person's free will. They got pulled up in this whirlwind, or this spinning matrix of a program that just pulling people into it, and things are happening. Now, I guess you could try to make a case like it's still their free will. It's just something happened to them different than maybe what they intended, because that's the wheel.
But you mentioned men's viewings earlier as an example of predestination, but how do they use men's viewings? Why does Rand want to know what men views? It's so that he can use that information not to change what she sees, but he can use that information to inform his choices. It again is that balance, that there's information that it comes through her visions that then has this feedback effect of altering some of the choices that people make in ways, Rand trusts people that he wouldn't have trusted without men's vision that they could be trusted, things like that. So
it was but okay. So bringing up to Lauren, this question about men's viewings, isn't this, this feels like a bit like, this is clearly the wheel knowing what's going to happen. Now, Andrew did bring this up in live chat when he said that, I thought it was Andrew that brought this up. It might have been Bill. This concept of the Dark One introduces some variance to that, right? Some instability in the vision or the programming of the wheel, to the point where there are things that happen that weren't necessarily, quote unquote, programmed by the wheel. So isn't Ishmael a little bit right? Don't we need the Dark One? Isn't the boar and touching the Dark One touching the world? Doesn't that present more what we would consider free will in the system?
It's interesting. When Rand enters the boar at the end, his blood literally drops on the rocks, and he's like, oh, and he thinks to himself, it's interesting that the people who foresaw this moment saw the blood on the rocks, but they didn't mention anything past that. And it's almost as if the Dark One's presence, or the closeness to the boar, or whatever you call that essence of the Dark One that is outside of the pattern, does prevent the ability to see into the future, because the Dark One himself is outside of time, which is interesting. But as far as men's viewings, I see that Mary's joking about men being a lamp, a sexy lamp.
Oh yes, I realize she's trolling. She's trolling me.
She is a lamp in the sense that she shines light on the future. Right?
Oh wow, there you go. Take that, frenzy.
Yeah. I don't know. Just because something is going to happen to me tomorrow that I don't know, if somebody else knows that that's going to happen to me, does that mean it's predetermined that it's going to happen to me?
No, not unless they inserted you into a program and wanted you to make that choice, and actually knew you would if they inserted you right at that right moment. So whether or not you're making the choice, you were kind of programmed to make it, weren't you?
Yeah, and I guess you would change certain choices if you knew. People ask, if you knew the day you were going to die, would you want to know that? If I knew that, I would certainly change my choices, right?
Well, yeah, and so
how the pattern's described, Matt, you're mean it unfairly.
Okay, that's true. I will agree with you that I am playing a little devil's advocate here. But that doesn't mean that the wheel does not do this. It does. It doesn't mean that it does it for everyone. And Jordan talks about this when he mentions this concept of, some random farmer somewhere. I can't remember what exact example he uses. He's like, that guy has all the free will in the world because the wheel doesn't care about him. It's like that's just some dude doing something. No one cares. It's the ones that are moving and shaking the balance that tend to get the most, curating by the wheel, if you will. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
You know what the irony of that is? I was just reading this when Loyal and Rand meet for the first time, and Loyal starts discussing the age lace, and Rand and he says, the pattern allows for small variations but not large ones. And then Rand is like, oh yeah, so I could be born as a farmer in Emmons Field, but I couldn't become a king. And then they both have a little chuckle over that. But the irony there is that's foreshadowing, because Rand becomes a king.
Right.
And so you could argue that, okay, within the limitation of the life you're born into, you don't have as much free will as maybe we hope we do in reality. But the wheel is infinite. Eventually, these people will live out all choices and all possibilities, right? And in that case, they have the chance to make choices over and over again, right?
It's almost, wait, let me see. What you're saying is it's almost like a supercomputer has an algorithm that it builds out worlds about how the programmed souls it puts into the world might act in infinitum, to the point where it can predict with absolute certainty how these entities will interact. And so when it inserts them in the pattern, it's almost like it might know what they're going to do and put them in there on purpose. I'm just saying, maybe that's what he's saying about mirror worlds and worlds of if. I don't know. That sounds like the system, Chris.
Like you're unfairly framing the argument again.
I would never do that. So let's move on from this one. We've kind of like killed this one. Did you want to make one last comment, Chris, and we'll jump from this topic of free will that I won?
I mean, yeah, I think at least that we have not used the word tel'aran'rhiod yet. Maybe we did and we haven't mentioned it, but that's what we're talking about, is when the pattern goes off track, the will spins out a tel'aran'rhiod, chooses someone to be tel'aran'rhiod, and spins them out in order to pull the pattern back into line. But the spinning that the will is doing is the will is trying to get the pattern right. The will is not concerned with the individual threads, which is why the individual threads do still have some free will within the pattern. The will is going for the overall pattern, the overall effect, the overall tapestry, but those threads still have some interplay. And that is very much like real life. I mean, we hope that we have free will, but we don't control where we're born or what families we're born into or any of the circumstances that make up our life. We are dealt a certain set of variables that we then navigate and make choices between those variables. I think
I agree, Chris. They do have free will within their prison. Okay, so let's move on to. Sorry. Sorry, that was mean. I love you, Chris. I love you.
This is why these conversations take until 4 a.m. when we're
That's right. They always come back to this point about how they're imprisoned. So the pattern itself, right, woven by the wheel. Now this is important, and you brought this up, Lauren, before, this concept. And did we have a quote on the pattern? Maybe we'll read that first. Sorry, we already read the pattern quote. Sorry about that. I forgot we had already covered that. So when Mogedion is ripped out by Brigitte from tel'aran'rhiod, we're told that she short-circuited the pattern. This is what I find really compelling, and I will come back to how much I still agree that there is some free will, but I think it happens not because of the wheel, but because of some other parts of the metaphysics here. One of the things, tel'aran'rhiod, right? As far as we understand, we're not sure if she was channeling. I don't think that's ever been established. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like she probably used some tel'aran'rhiod. We don't know exactly what the mechanism that she used, but she short-circuited, according to Jordan. That's I think the phrase he uses, the pattern. So that's fascinating, right? Because apparently people inside of this matrix, if you will, inside the pattern, can manipulate its programming. And that's what this at least suggests to me, right? The programming can be manipulated. Now, we also know of some other ways the program's manipulated. Balefire. And what I mean by manipulated is destroyed, right? Right. We're told that they stop using balefire because it destroys the pattern. So I think that that's really compelling, which is the one power not only is used to drive the wheel, right? It's not only used to drive the creation of the pattern, but it can be used to destroy that same pattern. And that is fascinating to me because sometimes we kind of say, well, the creator and the one power, they're all good, and the dark one's the thing that destroys. But it can be used to destroy the pattern. So the question I have for you, Lauren, is, do you think then the one power can be used to destroy the wheel?
I don't know that I have an answer to that. I'd love to hear what other people have to say, but
yeah, maybe we'll ask everybody in chat.
That's complicated because the one power is the thing that drives the wheel.
By the
Right?
way, by the way, this question of were the souls created by the creator or the wheel, 55% said yes, was created by the creator. That's a fascinating answer by everyone in chat, by the way.
That is fascinating.
We might have to go back there. I want to
By the-
find out why everyone believes that that's true. But yes,
Because it's clearly true, by the way.
I
I want to talk more about souls as well, because there's a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of interesting stuff there.
we're jumping into souls here. I want to get like this question. I want to talk about the one power's ability to destroy or not the pattern, and then we'll jump right into souls. And I think souls is, the last kind of main topic. By the way, those of you that are watching, please give us a little subscribe, like the video. Hope you're enjoying this kind of deep dive into the metaphysics. This is just something that we all three of us love to geek out about. We could do this forever. And feel free to give us a call if you have any comment about the creator, the dark one, the wheel, and the pattern. Kind of curious what your thoughts are there. So yes, this question of souls, another Andrew said that he doesn't, one power no, true power yes. Interesting, the belief that the true power could destroy the wheel. If the true power can be used to create the wheel, and it can be used within the pattern, and it can be used to destroy the pattern, I don't know, for me at least, it seems possible that the one power could be used to destroy the same thing that created it. And that is to say that the creator created the wheel. Now, I guess we can get back there as far as, I guess maybe I'll go to you, Lauren. Do you believe that the creator created the wheel by way of the one power? Is the true source the creator's source of power that he creates things by?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was thinking, though, about when we talk about the wheel and the pattern, we sometimes lump them together as being the same thing, and we sometimes think of them as two separate things, right? So I think maybe the one power can be used as in the example of balefire. The one power can be used to destroy the pattern, but that doesn't mean that's destroying the wheel, right?
Right.
It could be that if the pattern completely unravels, the reality as those people who live in it disappears, but the wheel just pulls those threads back together from wherever it's getting those and keeps going. It may start fresh at the first age or something, but
right.
It's possible that the wheel itself continues to spin a new pattern, and it's just the reality as they know it dies. So maybe the one power can be used to destroy the pattern, not the wheel. As far as the true source, it's very clear in the books that the true power is the essence of the dark one. And so you would assume that the true source is the essence of the creator. And I have to say, I'm sort of on the fence with that one. Clearly not Brandon Sanderson, Rand at the end of the books channels a new power. It literally says that. Let me find that quote. It's a new power. And he uses it to create anew the prison, the Dark One's prison. And he also specifies he's not weaving air, fire, water, spirit, earth. He's weaving a new power that he uses to create anew. And I don't know what that means exactly. Is he using the creator's power? It does say, though, that he's using the one power. He's just using like the purity of Sidene and Sidar.
Yeah, it almost suggests, and I don't know that this is, I can't remember if we asked Brandon this question before. Chris, do you remember this one? Is it almost suggesting the concept that it's using like almost the root, the true source itself, an unbroken and an unsplit version of the one power? That's almost what feels like it's being suggested here. Almost like you've paired it back and you've somehow woven them together, but as almost like the Forsaken are able, either male or female can channel the true power. It almost suggests that there is such a thing for the light. And that's almost the suggestion there. And I can't remember if we've asked him that question. So yeah, that's a great point to bring up here, which is, is it something else? But like you said, he's channeling the one power, so it really can't be something else. But he does explain it differently, describes it in kind of a different way.
I can't remember if we've ever asked that. It is something that a lot of characters, starting with Lews Therin in the prologue, seem to equate the one power with the light. Even as Lews Therin is overdrawing the one power to kill himself and create Dragon Mount, he's thinking to himself, the light, the blessed light, and he's equates drinking in the one power with drinking in the light. But I think they are wrong about that. I think and if they're equating the light with the creator, which is maybe another thing to wonder about. But I think the one power, if it's at the heart of creation and driving creation, then it has to be something that the creator made and left to drive his creation while the creator went on and did something else.
By the way, to our poll question of can the one power or true source destroy the wheel, 86% of our respondents, I'm not sure how many responded, but 86% of them said no. I think that's pretty fascinating. The question, and I know I say fascinating not because we have an answer, but because we've seen it destroy the pattern. But I guess you could say, and we know that the one power exists outside of the wheel, right? We know that the one power is driving the wheel. So it's a source of power that exists outside of it. Why couldn't it be used? If it's used, can be used to destroy the thing that they're inside of, why couldn't it be used to destroy the thing that creates it? So I'm definitely in the favor of it could be used to destroy the wheel. Maybe they wouldn't know how. Maybe that would be really difficult. Maybe the creators added some programming or some kind of fail-safe. Maybe it's just like everyone dies. It's like, they attempt to go against the wheel and then all the threads just get snipped and it starts the pattern over. I don't know. It's a fun idea. Now, one of the topics we wanted to cover here was the soul. And as you saw, I think, I want to say, what did I say? It was 52% said that the creators created the soul. I think that was the quote from everyone that's in live chat watching us. We've been told that the soul is actually immortal. I've tried my hardest to find proof against it. There are some things that might prove that to not be... I can't say it proves the negative on that, but we know that the Dark One can hold souls, and as far as we understand, indefinitely. We're not given to believe that there's any length of time. We are told that the Black Wind kind of consumes souls in some form or fashion. We're told that to create a gray man, that the soul disappears and that it's a kind of convenient fiction that the Dark One eats it. Now, does that mean disappears as in it goes back to the soul pool? So for maybe those who are watching, I don't know, Lauren, if you have that quote about the Loyal. Do you have that one handy where I think Loyal gives an answer? And I know it's an in-book answer, but it also follows well along with kind of the canon that we at least are aware of about souls. Do you have that one or...
I don't have the one. I don't have that. I have two Robert Jordan quotes about the souls, but I don't have that one from Loyal.
Okay.
Are you talking about the quote where he talks about which quote, Loyal?
I thought it was Loyal that talks about the maybe it wasn't the quote about the supply of souls. Oh, maybe it wasn't Loyal.
This is Robert Jordan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So he's being asked about the Nim, the green man.
Yep.
And he says, you might say that a Nim's soul was borrowed temporarily from the supply of souls awaiting rebirth.
Yep.
So there is this idea that, one thing we do know is that some or all of the heroes of the Horn go to tel'aran'rhiod between rebirths. And we assume that that's their soul, right? Their spirit, whatever you want to call that. And I think Brandon Sanderson actually uses the term spirit a few times in his...
did it?
Yeah, in his answers. But I think that's what Robert Jordan's talking about when he says the soul. It's sort of like the spiritual form of a person that exists outside of their body. But it's interesting that the Nim souls are borrowed temporarily from a supply. This implies that the people who constructed the Nim were accessing this pool of souls somehow. And so I had a theory that the souls were outside of the pattern or outside of the wheel, but now I don't think that's true because the Nim are constructed from souls.
Aren't we told that about Trollocs too? That they're
yeah. Trollocs have souls. But I just put that in.
It's
chat.
actually literally the same quote. A Trolloc, however, bears a twisted or corrupted soul and would be reborn as a Trolloc.
It's so interesting. Twisted or corrupted. So okay, I will accept that you can have immortal souls in this. That seems canon from what I can find. But it does seem like they can become corrupted. which again does kind of feed into the whole matrix concept of corrupting a program, whatever. but conceptually, right, they can be corrupted and used, right? It's almost like the wheel is like, oh, well, there's a corrupted soul. We'll give that over to the Trollocs, when I need. But the idea that Trollocs are threads in the pattern, it's one of those things, if you've never considered it, it kind of catches you off guard the first time. You're like, wait, what? So the wheel is controlling the Trollocs too, right? That's, I think conceptually you just think almost that the sorry, Nameless's quote in chat just caught me off guard. Trollocs have souls, gingers don't. There you go.
Look, this is why this is such a fascinating topic for me. I want to know what it's like.
That's good. Thanks, Nameless. That was good. Yeah, I think this question of a soul being able to be corrupted is quite interesting. Maybe that's the extent when Jordan says the convenient fiction about the Greymen is that, the soul is eaten by the Dark One, and maybe he means corrupted in some form or fashion and not able to be used maybe for its original intent. But I don't think that answers necessarily if souls are controlled or created by the will of the Creator. I believe, I think I believe the wheel creates them. Chris, I think you disagree with this notion. Why do you disagree? Like, what is it about the canon or the story or something that Jordan said? Or is it just kind of like you want it to be that way?
No, it's because I'm right, not because I... part of it is just the terminology. A spinning wheel doesn't create the threads. The spinning wheel uses the threads and then creates the tapestry, the pattern from that. And this quote from Loyal, from his and Rand's meeting in the Eye of the World when they're talking about all of this, Loyal says, "The wheel of time weaves the pattern of the ages, and lives are the threads it weaves. No one can tell how the thread of his own life will be woven into the pattern." The wheel is using lives, is using souls and weaving them into the pattern, but I think that's what the Creator made. The Creator made the wheel, and the Creator made these souls, and the wheel is weaving them in to create the pattern.
Okay, but what about the Ailfin and Aelfin? We know they have souls. So did the Creator create those? Did the Creator create all souls that we have? Or he created all souls and some of them were corrupted and eventually become Trollocs? I mean, yes. Do you think it's all the worlds, all souls that exist for all entity types, the Creator created those?
Absolutely. Baron said that there are three constants. The Creator and the Dark One are present in all of those alternate realities and all of those mirror worlds.
So this is, and maybe this is a question for, I'm kind of curious. I guess we already, from the souls created by the Creator, I wonder how much of this stems from, our religious concepts of the world, and I wonder if anyone that maybe grew up without the, maybe religious trappings of their thoughts about a deity like a Creator and about souls and such, I wonder if they read this any differently. It's not something we can kind of test right now, but it would be an interesting survey to put out there and find out from a reader standpoint how they perceive this, because we know that the wheel is this kind of ever turning, over and over again. It's this program. It almost seems like you're saying he created these souls, and I'm saying they're imprisoned, and I feel like there's a wall between our concepts of this, whereas they can't escape. They can't escape, and so maybe that's my concept at least. Lauren, do you think that a soul can exist outside of the wheel?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think the Creator has a soul, and the reason I think that is because you have to assume that it is the Creator talking, right, in the Eye of the World, and then again as Rand enters Shayol Ghul. But it says, when he enters Shayol Ghul, this is what it says. The all caps voice says, "It is time. Let the task be undertaken." The voice spoke with the inevitability of an earthquake, the words vibrating through him. More than sound in the air, far more. The words spoke as if from one soul to another. Moraine gasped, eyes opening wide. Okay, so she heard the voice, even though it was well, I don't know, was it speaking in the proximity? Was it, or was it speaking directly to his soul? I don't know.
It's a megaphone. It's a megaphone. I guess it's a mic. It's like testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Kind of thing.
I got to turn the volume down on this thing. Yeah. So the creator is speaking to him as one soul to another. So that's interesting to me. That almost implies that yes, they say there are 3 things that exist outside of the pattern: the creator, the dark one, and the true source. Well, maybe we could add a 4th to that list, and that is this pool or this place where souls await rebirth, aside from, of course, the heroes, who are clearly in tel'aran'rhiod. Maybe. I don't know if I believe that, but it's something to discuss.
Yeah, and I don't know that we won't get to an answer. We asked everyone in chat already. I like this. By the way, we'll probably finish up here in the next 10, 15 minutes. If one more person wants to give us a call, you can, or we'll turn off the phone lines here in just in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. If you have a question or you have an opinion on this idea, does the creator create all the souls and imprison them in the wheel, like I think, or like Chris thinks? Or is this an artifact of the wheel? Were they programmed into the wheel itself and we're kind of experiencing the story as it's happening from turning to turning, but these are not, these aren't entities that existed prior to the wheel. And we're certainly not told they are by Jordan. But I will say this, I think Jordan almost suggested that a soul could exist outside the pattern, right? If you entered the bore, at some degree, obviously the dark one can take your soul and hold on to it. And so if he's outside the pattern, it does suggest a soul can exist outside of the pattern itself. Now, if you say he's outside of the pattern, which was created by the wheel, but that was an encapsulating kind of event, but he is in the prison, but he is with the dark one. So it is a little bit suggestive that a soul could exist outside. And if it can exist outside, the question does become, does that mean that these were entities that did exist beyond the wheel and these are just kind of added to the wheel? So I love that aspect of this particular question. It gets us all in the sweet spot of what our personal philosophies and ideas about this are, which is I think the whole point of what Jordan is doing here is playing with a lot of the different philosophies of a lot of different cultures here in the world and kind of mashing them up and turning them around a little bit, right? He has this concept of rebirth. We have that aspect, but there isn't any idea that you just live a good enough life, or you not good enough isn't the right word, but that you somehow kind of graduate from the wheel, right? As far as we know, you never leave the wheel. And so that interest is interesting in and of itself, from Rand's experience, I think, and from the experience of them all, even those that know, right? Ishamael does react differently with this knowledge. And I think he's a fascinating character. Maybe we'll come back and do a show about Ishamael and Lews Therin, or just those 2 souls, and discuss kind of why, knowing what they know, do they come to different conclusions about the whole purpose and why they're here. I think that in and of itself is really fun. Before we kind of close up for the night, Lauren, was there any questions that you got on your video that we didn't kind of discuss tonight that were really interesting and kind of compelling from the fans that you wanted to address?
Yes, there were a few, and
okay,
I actually eventually hope to make a video just kind of responding to people's questions. And this is kind of separate from what we've been discussing, but I wanted to get your input on this because this isn't something I could find an answer for.
Okay.
How do we know that the wheel has 7 spokes, or rather that there are 7 ages? Or how do the people in the world of the Wheel of Time know that there are 7 ages?
Yeah, that's a great question. Chris, do you want to try to tackle that one first?
It's something that I have asked before too, and the only answer is because Robert Jordan said so.
Right, like even the Ogier, they just kind of accept it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I meant to say, I don't mean to imply that is the only answer. I mean, that's the only answer that I have come across. So there could be an answer to that. But
so I will give you an answer that I think is probably more accurate than Chris's. Other than the author said it was so, I'll give you an in-world explanation. How about that? We know that Ishamael, right, has this experience with the Dark One, right? We know their interactions with him, and we know that from Rand's experience, Again, hopefully those of you who are watching know their spoilers. Okay.
Too late now.
Rand's experience with the Dark One says that he's able to see, right? In essence, he almost gains the knowledge of this grand entity, this Dark One, and its awareness of things. So I would posit that there are individuals in the wheel that have gotten a peek behind the curtain and then have translated that understanding into the history books, and it somehow becomes part of the history. We don't know that the first agers believed this. As far as I remember from a canon perspective, we're in the third age, and that's coming through the Age of Legends when they finally learned how to channel. That's coming past people that bored into the Dark One's prison. So the story that we're being told is from the third age concept of their history. And so I think it can be securely suggested or hypothesized that is how or why they think that there are 7 ages. And maybe at the first age they don't, maybe there's just no concept of it all. And by the time the turning happens and the interaction with the Dark One happens, or perhaps it's some other interaction. We bring up Taviran, we bring up all of the mechanisms of the wheel. We don't know if there's not, the avatar of the wheel, right? We've talked about this. Who's Nakomi, right? Who, all of these aspects of the wheel, just because we've seen a couple of talents and such, doesn't mean we've seen them all. And so I certainly think you could also hypothesize that there is someone out there, some kind of oracle that led to this belief because that individual somehow interfaced with the wheel or the pattern in such a way that it got that awareness. So that's my in-world explanation. Not as cool as what I agree with Chris, which is, well, the author wanted it that way. So that's certainly is likely, but I think it does fit within the canon.
Well, I could amplify that a little bit to say I like that idea. The heroes of the Horn would be another, because while they're in tel'aran'rhiod, they have knowledge of all of their past lives.
Your answer's better.
That's true.
That's an easier answer. I will give you that one. That's heroes of the Horn interacting with people in tel'aran'rhiod. That's certainly.
I think that's just an expansion of your answer, or an example of the kind of thing you're talking about. That there are people and instances over the ages who would have who get a peek behind the curtain, and definitely that is knowledge that gets lost at some point because people in the First Age and the Age of Legends, or at least the Age of Legends, don't know that there's a Dark One and don't know that there's a prison waiting to have a whole board in it.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, that's some people forget that by the time the First Age comes back around, there is not there hasn't been at least a bore there. Although at some point it does happen that it can be detected, and so we don't know exactly when that happens. When the presence of the Dark One can be detected happens, but I think Jordan says there's times where there hasn't been one, and then there has been one, and there's something in between, right? There's patches, there's But are there other questions that they had? That's a great one.
I want to point out one other quote that we missed. This actually goes against what I was thinking about earlier about souls being outside of the pattern. Robert Jordan was asked, so threads and souls are the same thing? And he says, not the same thing, but they must coexist. The thread can be removed. You die in this world. You die and the soul remains to come again and begin another thread. Now, he's conversing with the person, but he does say the soul remains, which is interesting. And then further down in that same question and answer, he says, the only things that are outside are the Creator and the Dark One. Neither is affected by the pattern. And he says, even the Forsaken who are trying to gain immortality or try to be apart from the pattern are not outside of the pattern. So for what it's worth, maybe souls really are only within the pattern.
And I think he's, that's good. I think he's using lives because it's the same in the quote from Loyal where he says that lives are what the wheel is weaving to create the pattern. I think he's using lives there to describe a soul within a body, like
right. That's what he calls a thread. It's almost like the soul is the spirit and the thread is the body or something, right? And they can coexist, but they can also be separate.
Yeah,
he's saying that the thread is when a soul goes into a body and then it's placed within the pattern.
Yes, I would agree with that interpretation. That the thread itself requires, well, at first it requires a soul. Now we know that there can exist a thread with the Greyman that doesn't have a soul, but
yeah,
it
that's
did
the
at
same
one point.
quote. I didn't quote that part. He says the soul disappears from the gray man. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it still has a thread, and so we know that it can exist. We know that there can be a thread without a soul, but we don't know that it can begin that way. What's interesting is I don't know that we know what Brigitte was as far as when she was placed in the pattern. You know, is that like was she hacked in and given a thread, but it didn't have a connection, so it was like wildly loose and it was about to die, and that's how they were able to hold on to her, because the thread itself wasn't attached to the pattern. I don't know. That's one way to kind of consider that moment. So. But anyway, so was there another? Did you have another question?
There's one other question that I thought was fascinating, and I think we've sort of addressed this. But so, how do they fix the problem of the Dark One having infinite chances to win? That's the question.
How do they fix the problem?
Does the Dark One have infinite chances to win? I interpret the ending of the books to say, maybe the Dark One can't win as long as there's one good person willing to choose good choices. Right? That's kind of the way Rand interprets it at the end.
Yeah, well, if you think about this, the wheel can control what people create the boar and how it comes about. So as far as infinite chances, sure, but not infinite chances without a mechanism that's meant to control the possibilities of how capable the Dark One could be to destroy the pattern in the wheel. So yes, but no, if that makes sense. Yes, but it's in a controlled lab, if you will, and it's been vetted. His opportunity to affect the pattern is well vetted by the creator's creation, which, as far as we know so far, has been efficiently capable of handling the Dark One.
I would go back to I would answer this by going back to the question about whether or not the one power can be used to destroy creation, and say that it can, because that's humans using the free will that they have to unravel the pattern, but that the Dark One can't do that without getting humans to do it for it, which is why all through the series, the Dark One, instead of killing people like Rand and Matt and Perrin, when it has lots of opportunities, especially early on, the Dark One is trying to instead to break them and convert them into its service. The Dark One needs people, and as long as, kind of like what Lauren said, as long as people resist, I think the Dark One, rather than having infinite chances to win, the Dark One gets infinite chances to lose.
Yeah, and Nablus pointed this out as far as if there are infinite chances, then the logic would state that he can't, because he hasn't. So, but I would say that our concept of infinite turnings just depends on how actually or how factual that concept is. I'm trying to think if Jordan states that there have been infinite turnings versus it's possible, it can, or it's built to. I'll have to go back and check that out. So, but yes, I would also say though that the true power. Well, anyways, we don't have to go down that road, but I think that's a fun one. This concept of infinity and infinite chances, and as far as how the true power affects that concept. But yes, one would suggest, if the logic is true, if what Nablus said is correct, which is the Dark One doesn't have a chance, or would have already won. So
this quote from Rand, when he's talking to the Dark One at the end, he says, "You really are nothing. You would never have given me rest as you promised. You would have enslaved me as you would have enslaved the others. You cannot give oblivion. Rest is not yours, only torment." Does this mean he's sort of denying the Dark One the ability to give oblivion? Is he saying you cannot give oblivion because I'm choosing here? Or is he saying you don't have the ability to give oblivion, Dark One? Rest is not yours, only torment.
I interpret that as the latter. He's saying the Dark One does not have that ability. It's on the next page where he says the Dark One was never the enemy.
Right.
But I would point out that that's still Rand's in-world. Well, I guess you could say he's not necessarily in-world, but his concept of what he's understood. So I still think it plays along Jordan's dissonance
Unreliable.
between unreliable narrator, that is Rand's understanding. And I believe that is Rand's understanding. Is that true? I'm not sure.
Well, it's kind of the culmination of the whole series, and
And
it dovetails with his synopsis and his notes of the point of the series being that free will is necessary.
right. Anyway, that's another discussion, probably.
Yeah, that's another discussion. Yeah. So Joe brought up one last topic, and maybe we'll in essence, basically, we haven't really touched on the boar, and Joe mentioned if the wheel represents time, you can't destroy it. You can't destroy time. And so, this comes back to everyone's belief about how this particular aspect works, right? If the wheel is literally a super AI, and it's versus, is it this infinite system that has always been placed there and it just exists and there's no breaking the wheel at this point, and time can't be destroyed. But if the Dark One exists outside of it, and you can destroy the pattern itself, I don't know. I think those questions still remain. I think everyone, it'd be fun to see. Maybe this is what we'll do after this show. For those of you that have watched, hopefully you stuck in there with us and had some fun here in chat. This is a lot of fun to discuss the philosophies that we all have and how we apply them to the Wheel of Time. Plus, it's fun to just dig into what Robert Jordan said and play around with these concepts. Jump into Discord after this. You can find the link in the description. You can come talk to us in the live shows channel. Sometimes we jump into the CouchCon and just do some audio. We just chat about it, and just like this, but outside of the confines of the show, outside of the pattern, if you will. So, by the way, Lauren, thank you so much. For those of you that missed it, Lauren was awesome. He did this, man. That is so cool. Lauren had this made, and he sent it. And he was going to bring it in person. Man, we're going to post that up. That's amazing. I can't wait to take some pictures and put that online. Thank you again, Lauren, for being here. Looking forward to your next video that you put out. Everyone go check out Lauren's channel, Unraveling the Pattern. There should be a link in the description. And definitely subscribe to him, follow him, and watch the stuff that he's put out there. It's not an hour and a half long discussion. You can kind of watch it, I think, in 20 minutes and learn all about the metaphysics if you thought this was fun. And we'll do another show just like this. Lauren will bring you back, and your next video, if there's kind of some deep spoilery, kind of a spoiler edition where people are asking a lot of questions and you want, this will be a lot of fun to do this again with you here. And Chris, thank you so much, man, for showing up tonight. We're all social distancing physically, but now we're so close virtually, and that's fun. And thank you, everybody in chat. Your conversation, they've been hilarious tonight. Really appreciate it. Always, and it was fun to do all the polls. We played with that a little bit more, and hopefully, I think it was Daniel or Andrew that said this isn't. He didn't like the polls because there was no maybes, and that's right. You got to take a stand. You got to take a stand. And for those of you that are still here, Friday we will be having Sarah Nakamura live with us talking about the Wheel of Time. That's going to be a blast. 8 p.m. Eastern. I changed it from 9 p.m. Remember, 8 p.m. Eastern. Follow us on social media if you want to make sure you don't miss that. So, that being said, everyone, good night from the Dusty Wheel, and as we say around here, smash to black.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. If you want news and rumors